Welcome to In Your Element, the podcast that unlocks practical wisdom in higher education, where leadership meets real talk. I'm Brendan Henkel, Manager of Solutions Engineering here at Element 451.
And I'm Daniella Nordin, Element 451's Director of Customer Success and Engagement. Join us every other Thursday for discussions with everyday heroes using Element 451 in enrollment, marketing, and student success. We'll unlock the practical tips to help you make waves on your campus.
In Your Element is a part of the Enrollify Network, a robust collection of podcasts designed to help higher education professionals like you grow. Explore our other shows at enrollify.org or check out some of my personal favorites linked in the show notes below.
Enrollify is made possible by Element 451, the leading AI-powered all-in-one student engagement platform, helping institutions create meaningful, personalized, and engaging interactions with students. Learn more at element451.com.
Welcome back, everybody, to In Your Element, quickly becoming your favorite podcast. If this is not going to be your favorite episode, I don't want to know about it, right, Brendan? Because we've got two really special guests today.
Episode of the year.
Episode of the year right here. I'm super excited because I've been working with this team actually for the entire time that I've been at Element 451. So I feel like we've grown together, but we've got our friends from Durham Tech here. We've got Jessica Vaughan, the newly established and promoted Director of Enrollment Management and CRM Strategy, and Dr. Abe Dones, who I think his title should be Sunshine of Our Lives, but his official title was Vice President and Chief Student Officer. Does not encompass everything that Dr. Dones does. Welcome, both of you. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
I'm super excited because we have gone on a journey, friends. We've been on a journey. We've gone on a journey. This is going to be the first of a 3-part series, so everybody gets to hear your story. But let's start at the beginning of the story, a very good place to start. And I'm going to throw this question to you, Dr. Dones, because I feel like you've got the background here. What challenges really led Durham Tech to start looking for a CRM solution, and particularly a modern CRM solution? Because you're really a change agent and have propelled a lot of change at Durham Tech. So I think this was really important for you to find something different.
Appreciate that question wholeheartedly. You know, one of the things that in my academic training, when I went and pursued my bachelor's in industrial engineering, were 3 factors: efficiency, cost, and customer output or success or satisfaction, right? And one of the things that I recognized in my several roles that I have served in here at Durham Tech was that our current systems just were not keeping up with the needs of students today. The advancement of technology, communication was, and at times still is, a major challenge for the college. And we were using platforms that didn't talk to each other. I mean, there was really disaggregated systems, and having to go to several systems to get one chunk of information to be able to properly and judiciously serve a student was a major concern of mine, because I had to use those different systems, and it wasn't efficient. It wasn't effective. And so what made it hard for us was to be able to follow a prospective student, not only a prospective student, but from prospective to enrolled to now registered to a current student, and that they persist and continue on with us until they accomplish their personal endeavors with us academically, but also personally. And so we knew we needed some modernization, and we needed a student-centered approach, and something that will help us not only respond quickly, but personalize the outreach, make a better connection, more timely communication with our students, and ultimately removing some of the friction that students face when navigating college. Let's be honest, the students that we serve at community college are extremely diversified, come to us with different life experiences, different academic experiences, but our system is not designed to facilitate those interactions and to engage those students. So that's what really sparked our search and our interest for a pristine solution that could help us do the job, but do it more effectively.
And I mean, that's a story we hear all too often because you're right. It's not just in Durham, North Carolina that you have these diverse students with these problems. It's all across the country. So like these are problems that a lot of schools are looking to solve. Now, I'd love to think that it is the fact that we were destined to work together at some point, Dr. Dones, because I mean, listeners, if you don't know this, at one point I was going to work at Durham Tech in financial aid, and life happens, things happened, didn't end up going and doing that role, but we would have been coworkers. And then I come to Element and now they're partners and now we're conferencing together. So I'd like to think that it's just this destiny, but I'm sure that there's a lot more that went into, whenever you were seeing these problems unfold, Element popped up and you're like, okay, this could maybe be the solution to what we're going for. So can you speak a little bit to that too? Because I mean, as you were looking for that problem, why did Element stand out?
Before you go there, Dr. Donis, I'm sorry, Brendan, but you just blew my mind. I have never heard that story. I had no idea that you were destined to work with Durham Tech like this.
We're
What?
brothers linked for life now. So I mean,
What? Did you know this, Would you have hired Brendan? Be real.
I was hired. I was hired.
Oh, you were.
I was hired.
Oh, wow. Wow.
There's a big story here. And the audience also doesn't know that we're also both Eagles fans.
I was
right?
about to say, you missed like one of the most critical parts of this conversation and didn't mention being Eagles fan. Like, go Birds. Like, come on, Brendan.
Go
That
Birds,
should be
baby.
like the
Go
first
Birds.
statement you made.
Okay. Sorry. First off, go Birds.
Go Birds.
Go Birds. So that's the first thing. But yeah, so all right, we'll diverse just for a second here, just for the story. So I was in financial aid prior to coming to Element. I applied for a job because I had a friend that worked in the financial aid office already. And he was like, hey, you'd be a great fit here. Apply. I applied, went through the process, got hired. And then unfortunately I made that silly decision of getting an offer I couldn't refuse from my current employer to stay. And I took it, unfortunately. So, and I missed my opportunity to get my relationship started off early with Dr. Donis. And here I am today. But it was destiny, right? It was destiny for us to link up the Eagles fandom and now with Element. And this is even better because we get the conference together, we get all these things. So it ended up where we should have been. But yeah, it was destiny. So that's why they're here, Danielle. I hate to break it to you. I mean, I know Element's great and it fits the role, but what happened is it was destiny for us to finally link up.
Wholeheartedly agree.
Yep, there we go. So, all right. So now, all right, back on. We've been distracted, squirrel, all the way over here on the right, but let's move it back to the middle of the road. Why Element, Dr. Dennis? Tell us a little bit about how you saw that kind of fill those gaps that you guys were experiencing.
Wow. So it would be irresponsible of me if I don't talk about how I was introduced to artists. And, you have a fellow colleague that I absolutely adore as well. And Colin was the one that I had a conversation with him at a conference, at the System Office conference. And we started talking and having conversation about challenges that I saw with our systems and what I was hoping to accomplish. And he says, man, I need to introduce you to our CEO. And so he introduced me to artists. And at that same time, I was engaging with artists at Element 451. I was also engaging with two other early alert CRM type companies. And there were some mergers going on at that time. And I was really interested in trying to identify a system that could integrate a CRM platform, but also consider the development and use of a early success system, typically known as an early alert system. Well, when I spoke to each of those entities, Element 451 stood out because not only do I believe that artists showed a level of compassion and desire to really serve and support students at the community college, Daniella gave me this title early as a change agent. And I do believe that that's what I am. That's who I am. I also believe I operate as a transformational leader. And there was some chemistry that to me happened between artists and I when we started having this conversation to really look at how can we transform the landscape of the work that we do with a system, with the integration of a powerful tool. The other piece that stood out to me for Element 451 that it was clearly built with higher education in mind, but it was built for community colleges, which was a different concept, a different idea than the current platforms that had existed at that time. The other piece for me is when having conversation with artists, I had talked to him about I serve different constituents of students at the college. I don't only serve curriculum seeking students, I serve continuing education students, which is a different enrollment registration process. I serve college and career readiness students, which are high school students who are coming back to now pursue their high school degrees. And what I asked artists at that time was, can we build a system that could help support all of those students? Because many times our institutions focus on one of those areas over the other. Me trying to be equitable in my mindset and how I approach this work, I wanted to make sure that I was serving all students. And he took me up on that offer. He brought a team here to the college. We had a think tank session with current leaders at the college and other stakeholders. And we started mapping this thing out on what it looked like. That to me provided such a lasting impression because the term early success was actually being promoted by artists. So for him to shift the narrative of an early alert system to now early success system, because we wanted to highlight and promote these successes of our student, spoke volumes to me. It also indicated to me that he gets it and he understood it. And so for me, it wasn't just that it was a CRM. It was going to be a powerful communication and engagement platform for us to leverage how we engage our students. How do we make sure that they are informed and aware of what they have going on as it relates to their application, as it relates to their academic journey, as it relates to the services and supports that we offer, as it relates to the activities and the events that we host on campus? How can we promote their belongingness? How can we ensure that we're serving them at the highest quality level? So it gave us the ability to automate messaging, to personalize that outreach at scale, better understand the student journey through data, because that was another factor for me. How am I capturing and understanding the data as it relates to our processes? Where are their bottlenecks? Where are their barriers? Where are their issues and challenges that exist for our students that's now allowing them to get through a process? And so for me, I felt like Artist and his team understood that mission. And it really just solidified for me that I was about to engage in something institutional changing as it relates to our work and what we do. And so they listened. Not only did they listen, they started asking the right questions and they work with us as partners. Like I felt a connection and a collaboration with them instinctively. That made the big difference for me. We weren't just buying software, we were building a relationship that supports student success.
When two change agents get together, when you and artists like innovators, people who really want to change the industry, disrupt the industry, like that's a really nice melding of personalities, of relationships, and making that connection really made a difference.
Well, it was like you talking to somebody and they understood you. Like I didn't have to have deep conversation with him to persuade him why serving community college students was significant or was important, right? He just understood it from its inception and we just rolled with it. I mean, I remember in that room just mapping out the student journey and all the notes, he took pictures of it and then he sends them to me. So instinctively, there was a connection there. And I just appreciated his level of commitment, but also, like you said, his ability to want to create something altering for the industry was just so impressive.
That's amazing. This is awesome. Well, we got to talk about, so you invested in the relationship, I'll say, with Element. Let's talk about implementation because we kind of had a rising star emerge from implementation. I'm referring to you, Jessica. Your story is so interesting to me because you started out as the director of health and wellness, but you were the person in the room who saw Element's potential, I think. And you've been able to really carve out a niche and be successful with what you were doing with your specific program and really applying that like across the campus. I am a big fan and I suggest everybody watch your lightning talk from last year's Engage, 10 things I learned about implementation. But talk to us a little bit about, how did you approach that process? What made you so successful, do you think?
Well, like Abe, I am all for process improvement and I like change. I don't think everyone likes change as much as we do, but we,
Nobody likes change.
I
Absolutely nobody.
yeah, just building out the health and wellness application and learning how the process was going to improve the efficiency. We were paper. And so switching from paper to electronic, we had so many applications lost in the shuffle. And so now we are able to track this data, review the data, analyze it, and then improve upon it. So, and then all within that, you can still communicate and automate. I mean, that was the biggest thing for me is just being able to take this and say, oh, you can click this one button and there's an email sent to a student. And so doing that was kind of what got me really excited about working with Element and seeing the potential. And then that kind of just led to more and more responsibilities within Element and Abe saying, okay, well, let's do this now and let's do this now and let's do this now. And so we kind of snowballed and here we are. We have a great team. I would highly recommend having all your SMEs on board so that you, especially IT, if you're integrating, that's a huge piece that you need. And the team is huge and what matters the most in how you get this work done. They have to see the vision. I mean, that's part of it too, right? Like, and so, we struggle with that sometimes, but you point out this process improvement and then they're like, oh, this will make my job easier. And so, once they see that vision and they get on the bus, as Dr. June always references, then we have progress, right? And we have success from that. So that's been kind of our just kind of motivating and keeping the team engaged and moving forward with this. But we're also just individually kind of reaching out to areas of the college and saying, how can we move this into Element? What can make this better? What can make this easier for you? Keeping Element at the forefront of the college so that they know that it's available to them and then they can use it to their advantage.
Yeah, I really love that. I think a couple things stood out for me there, right? You're asking questions. You're asking the what if questions. It really helps you explore possibilities, right? And if a door's cracked open, can you push it open a little bit more? And that's where you really start to uncover like transformational change. So I love that. And then the second thing was you said getting your SMEs together. And I think institutions don't do this enough because probably for a couple of reasons, right? They don't know how to locate their subject matter experts because they're doing things that aren't highlighting what their strengths are. But like that process is so powerful because Element compared to other platforms isn't one that you just put in the hands of your IT team and say, go nuts, donuts, but you get your subject matter experts across departments and you're like, okay, imagine what you can do with this. And that's where I think, again, when you speak of transformational change, that's where it begins. So you described it so beautifully, but I know that there were speed bumps in the way. So we have to dig into the speed bumps. So tell us a little bit about some of those speed bumps that you guys kind of walked into and how you navigated them.
Yeah. So how we started the project, I would say was one of our speed bumps, right? We didn't have the SMEs on board. We didn't have we hired a consultant and had them come in. And that was really a challenge because they didn't understand our internal process and how we operated as an institution. And so that was one of our hiccups along the way. And then, it's change. Change again. Nobody likes change. Not nobody. Some of us do, but change management, that's where Dr. Dones comes in. He really enforces that and backs it with the why. It's always make it make sense, right? Why are we making this change? Why do we do it this way now when we could do it this way and it makes more sense? So overcoming those barriers and those hiccups, if you will, was one of the things we had to do. The other, hiccup, data integration. That's a big hiccup, right? It's a large, what we're doing is a large scale project. I mean, it's huge going from CFNC to Ethos to colleague. That's a lot of data moving, right? And so it's kind of opened our eyes that colleague is challenging and we have a lot of custom fields and there's a lot of roadblocks when Ethos, which is once like perfect, clean data, and our colleague system, which we've had for years, may not be as clean as we would like or as we had hoped. And so that's been one of our biggest challenges is, making sure our data is clean so that the integration works successfully. That's one of the big things we want to see is on the integration log, success, the green success. It's like, ooh, that makes us happy, right? So that's our biggest challenge right now is still the data integration, but we are seeing more and more success and seeing the work that we put into it is coming to light here.
I want to tag team Jessica on that second piece because it's also informing us that we need to do a better job with the integrity and the quality of our data. So junk in, junk out, quality information in, amazing data points out, right? And so it has been really helpful for us from a quality enhancement perspective to really look at what we're doing, how we're doing it, and how to continuously improve a process or a data set of information that we know requires some level of attention and care.
I'll also just say, I think we take for granted that all of these systems work and don't often think about the heavy lift. Like, this is a big project. You're talking about thousands of students and data talking between 3 different systems, and the work that goes into that, we often don't think about that. So it is worth just pausing and thinking, like, that's a big project. You implemented a CRM, you implemented an API integration, and you were successful in changing your entire admissions policy. So, talking about success, I would love for you all to tell this story about, I'll say, maybe the hoops students had to jump through before you guys really eliminated barriers. And I don't know, we can both fight for who wants to answer that question, share that story.
I'll just say this, and I'll let Abe tag on to the changes that he implemented. But we now can admit students within minutes if we wanted to, right? We have the ability. They come in admitted. We're immediately communicating with them. And it's very program specific of how their communication is and what their requirements are. So going from, I don't even know, days, weeks to processing an application to within minutes. I mean, that's pretty amazing, right? So how we got there was we started realizing we were implementing a process that was the same process, just using Element. And that's when, Abe and I were like, wait a second, this doesn't make sense. Why are we just doing the same thing, just adding another system in the works, right? And so Abe was like, whoa, why do we have, we both were like, why do we require these things? Why do they have to have transcripts before they can apply? And we broke it down into applying and then being registered for classes. And what do they really need to get into the college versus what do they need to register for the classes? And then, so that's when Abe was like, let's look at state board code and see what's really required. Let's look at SACs, see what they require. And that's when we decided we're removing all these barriers. We're taking all this away. And we changed our admissions policy to implement this change. And now it's students are admitted if they meet state board code. And then they may have additional requirements based on the program that they select. But it's not a one standard for all like it was in the past. So,
and I think the biggest part, because I think it's important for people to recognize, you have to review your policies that exist.
Right.
And you don't want to counter your operation if it's discounting a policy that you have established. So for us, it was recognizing that we were adopting a tool that was much more powerful than we could ever have imagined. And then now let's make sure that what we do from a policy perspective is aligning with those conditions. So it allowed us to do some more research and dig a little deeper, going to state board code, because that is our entity that oversees our institutions, and it's responsible of us to ensure that we're in compliance with those standards. But man, their standards were much more restrictless than what we were putting on our own selves. So we were actually putting barriers for our students as an institution, and we needed to do something about that immediately.
I remember when you guys brought this to me. Like, I remember having a meeting and you literally said you have to be a US citizen and you have to be 18 years old. And I'm looking at your instance of Element being like, okay, well, there's 16 other things here. that you're asking for. And I just remember being like, we could do this. Like, why aren't we doing this? I had the easy job, though, of helping you all sort of streamline an element, but you really had the difficult job of campus buy-in and of change and really like shifting the culture at campus to be able to do this. Maybe talk a little bit about that, Dr. Dones. I remember this is my story. They invited me to present this concept to what I thought was a small group of admissions folks, and the camera comes on and it's like the cafeteria of
Dr. Dones fleeced you. He fleeced you, didn't he? He gave you the old Philly fleece.
With 50 people in the room. And I felt like I was so glib, like on this presentation, because I thought I was presenting to just a small group and it was like personal. And they opened up that camera and I about died, you guys. I about died. But we must have done something right.
That was a very momentous opportunity for us to recognize, because your face on the screen said it all. It was hilarious. Like, we really enjoyed that moment, but I think it spoke to the excellence by which you operated and you supported us with, Danielle, because not once did you ever say, no, you can't do that. That's going to be impossible. That's going to be too hard. We've done all this work already. You said, okay, let's make it happen. Those were the words I remember you telling us. So I think when you are considering a shift, and it's more than just mindset, it's a shift in the culture that exists at your institution. Jessica knows this term. I tell them go beast mode, right? And beast mode is that you just go in and you're just driving the case. You're driving the reason. You're driving the significance of why you are considering changing an operation that has existed for a very long time. And so there was a lot of resistance because people just weren't willing to think of something a little differently. But when you substantiate it with fact, like state board code, and when you are innovative enough to separate an enrollment process or task versus a registration activity, it then starts making sense to individuals. And you start getting a level of buy-in and understanding and willingness to accept some changes, to the point where you start realizing that this change has the opportunity and ability for even considerations to change the work that people are doing. There is so much manual labor that goes into getting a student seated in a class. And our goal was to, how do we change that? How do we make it more immediate for the student? And how do we inform them and let them know what status they're in a specific enrollment process? But also, how do I do a better job of serving students and make sure that we're meeting their needs? And that is not having employees behind a computer with data entry and manual processes. It's putting our individuals, our employees, and our colleagues in front of spaces where they can interact and engage with students. Because the connectedness that we needed, especially after an experience like COVID, the opportunity to be more aware of an individual student's behaviors or needs sometimes can't be interpreted through a technological platform. And so for me, it was the combination of the efficiency of a technological system and now the interaction and engagement with human to human that really is a factor in how we can better serve our community and our diverse student needs. And so those were kind of the strategies that we put in place. And then the biggest one is, this is centered around the student experience. This is centering our work around students, our constituents, the reason why we do the day in and day out work that we come to do, and that we absolutely love. We love being able to serve students. And if we didn't, we wouldn't be here. And so for me, it was giving that purpose and giving it that vision in order for us to do our job at the highest level of customer satisfaction.
I love that. And, one of the things that we've talked a lot about, the journey, right? Your journey of feeling the pain, finding the solution, but there's more pain after that, right? Because then you have your change management process It's like it gets worse before it gets better, because now you have to convince people, you have to cast the vision. But one of the things that it helps in those moments is perspective, right? Of being able to look at, okay, once we get on the other side of this, there's two outcomes. We're going to be able to better serve our students, and we're also going to be able to share this, right, as a modicum for success for other people. And so that's, I kind of want to dig in on that. If you could give, like, through your process so far, what would you tell someone else on the other side? Because we've talked in person, we've talked digitally, Dr. Dones, like, there's been challenges, but you've kept this, like, focus, this laser focus on getting on the other side of this, because you can see the vision, you know what's on the other side. So I'm interested, what would you give the advice to people that maybe at any one of the stages that we talked about today, for kind of, what to do?
One of the biggest pieces of advice that I can give is, don't think of this as just an adoption of technology or a change in technology. You have to think of this work as a shift in your culture, and shifting the culture and mindsets of your colleagues who become accustomed to doing things a certain way and feel extremely comfortable doing it. But man, when you start really challenging them and to really consider that the work that you want to do to be transformational, and how you engage with students and how your teams can work together, gosh, that's a powerful opportunity that exists for you to really transform the work. So I would begin by identifying your goals. What are you hoping to accomplish with the incorporation of a technological tool like Element 451? What do you want to improve? What is it that you're trying to really enhance? Then start bringing the right people together. I think one of the things that I wish I could take back is bringing individuals earlier into the conversation, assessing the capacities of certain areas that are instrumental in the integration of Element 451 with your current student information system. And then when folks feel like they're part of the process, the adoption goes a little bit smoother. So if you can involve individuals earlier on, bring them into that think tank session. Cast your vision, but let them develop one for themselves, even if they're not an individual who's used to doing that. Because, when you provide space and opportunity for that level of thinking or that level of creativity to ensue, you never know what can happen. And so I would really love to see, as we continue to move forward, being more strategic and intentional of how we engage individuals in our processes earlier on, because sometimes they can provide a level of insight that even the visionary may be missing on. And I think the other piece is understanding what the need is. When I approached this work, it was a little bit easy for me because I had served in the role of the registrar. I had worked as an academic advisor with these antiquated tools, right? So for me, there was something that I was always wanting so I could do my job more effectively and do better with, as it relates to how I support and serve students. So that's kind of my advice, and the final piece of the puzzle will be choose a partner and not just a platform. We chose Element because they understood our vision and were committed to helping us get there. I mean, that's just me being real and keeping it transparent. They weren't just selling me some software. There was a level of commitment and buy-in from artists to want to see how an institution can transform the lives of its students that it serves.
Yeah. And guess what? You just picked the title for this episode: Choosing a Partner, Not a Platform. There we go. So thank you so much for that inspiration through the episode. And Jessica, I would be remiss if I didn't get your advice too, because your boots on the ground, right?
There is no other side for me, though, because, we keep adding more and more and more stuff into Element, and you guys keep growing and expanding and offering more. And so we're just like following this moving line, right? And we're not going to be on the other side, because we're going to continue to improve and change and make, the process better. So that is where I will leave it, is just that there is not another side, Brendan.
That's awesome. It's awesome because this isn't the last we're going to hear from you either. So we're going to invite you back on. We're going to talk about student success, about the work that you all have been doing. So I want everyone to stay tuned for that. But I think we've come to the end of this particular episode, which means we've got a special question for you. Jessica,
well, hold on. Do we need to think this through a little bit? Because
I
we're
know.
doing 3 parts. So do we get one of their
Yes,
one
that's
element,
a good
and
idea.
then we do the next one, the other one?
No.
So
Yeah.
Jessica, we'll start with you.
Yeah. Jessica, when are you in your element?
You know, I'm upset because I listened to all of these and I'm like, oh, what would I say? And I would say when I'm in element, but somebody stole it recently. And I was like,
No, jerk.
that was my
Just kidding.
line. What?
I like all of our guests that we have. None of them are jerks.
So I don't know. I'm in my element when a colleague comes to me or I go to a colleague and say, let's change this. And I can demonstrate how their process is going to improve and how we can automate things. That's probably when I'm in my element the most.
I love that.
I love that too. You got to stay tuned for Dr. Dones. We're going to ask you on the next one, Dr. Dones. You got to think of a really good answer to it. But
Hers was good.
Hers was
that's
good.
Staying true to change agent
Change it.
form. You know what I mean?
yes,
Mhm.
yeah. This has been so much fun. I can't wait to have you guys on again. Everybody stay tuned. You're going to have to hear our voices over and over and how much fun. I will also say, so my husband was born in Philly. So I too am an honorary. I'm going to fly,
Say it.
Eagles fly, go birds.
There we go. There we go.
Taylor Swift also from Pennsylvania. So we're connecting again
No
back
matter-
to Taylor. Yeah. No matter
And
what.
no matter what
Um,
her dating life is and who her relationship is, there's a song
There's
about her being an
there's-
Eagles fan. Okay, it is cemented, and so we'll have to forgive her for her mistakes of going with the Chiefs and wearing that god awful red and yellow. Anyway, go Birds.
And you can't see it, but Jessica, you're in Eagles green. I mean,
No.
oh no. So we're all part of this. We got to get out of here. Thank you guys. In Your Element is part of the Enrollify podcast network. If you like this podcast, chances are you'll like other Enrollify shows too.
Our podcast network is growing by the month, and we've got a plethora of marketing, enrollment, and higher ed technology shows that are jam-packed with stories, ideas, and frameworks, all designed to empower you to be a better higher ed professional.
Our shows help higher ed marketers and enrollment professionals find their next big idea and feature a selection of the industry's best as your host. Learn from Mallory Wilsey, Artis Kadu, Maya Demishkovich, and so many other of your favorite leaders in higher ed.
Enrollify is made possible by Element 451, the leading AI-powered, all-in-one student engagement platform, helping institutions create meaningful, personalized, and engaging interactions with students. Learn more at element451.com.